Hello and welcome to LO Fantasy Football. I'm your host, Joe Johnson. I'm joined by Ian Witherspoon.
Hello.
Ian,
Yes.
you playing fantasy this year?
Couple leagues.
Couple of leagues, me too. I'm in 2 right now. I'm doing really well in one league. I'm 4-1, and in my big league, I'm 2-3. What's your record?
4-1 in the league as well, and 3-2, I believe, in the other league.
3-2. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. The success that you're enjoying, what do you attribute it to? Let's go back to draft day. Who was on your must-have list on draft day?
Well, the league I'm 4-1 in. I had an early pick. I think it was third or fourth, and I took Zeke. I never really get a running back like that, I feel, so it was nice to have that. I'm a plug-and-play guy, and I got to be honest, a lot of luck, But thankfully, the league is up in offense overall. So I feel like there's a lot of guys.
Yeah, the NFL, I mean, the scoring is off the charts. I don't know if it has anything to do with the roughing the passer rule, but scoring is way up. It's shattering records, and multiple quarterbacks are leading the league in fantasy points, and wide receivers and running backs have taken a bit of a hit.
They have. There's still a couple guys, your bell cows. But
yeah, and if you have
a
pass catching running back, you're doing okay. Look at Saquon Barkley. I drafted him in one league. It's funny, I took a chance on him, and boy, is he really paying off. And he is catching passes like crazy. And in a PPR league, having a pass catching back like that is huge. And he's finding the end zone too.
Yeah.
He's one of the few shining stars on that Giants roster.
Ooh, boy. Yeah, they aren't throwing the ball downfield, are they?
No, much to the dismay of
their good wide receivers.
Yeah,
Beckham and
that's right.
Shepard. Yeah.
They are not happy right now. And I got to say, I was a little surprised when I learned at the beginning of the season that Eli was coming back. When he got benched last season, which ended his starting streak, I thought, well, Eli's done in New York.
Right.
Next thing you know, he's starting in week 1, and here we are a little bit more than a quarter of the season into the fantasy season, and the Giants are 1-4, is it? And
I think
1-5
now.
after losing Thursday Night Football, and I got to put the blame squarely on the shoulders of Eli.
Well, for a great franchise like the Giants are, I mean, they have like 5 Super Bowls or something. I mean, they're a good franchise. They're one of the best in the league. The way they handled Eli last year, and then to bring him back, like you said, you think that's it. You're going to break this man's Iron Man streak by sitting him for Webb Davis or whoever it was.
Yeah.
And Webb Davis gets cut in the preseason, and Eli's starting week 1.
Yeah.
It was insane.
Yeah, that was heartless to bench Eli.
Well, I mean, it's like they dipped their toe in the water, and then they just jump back out.
Yeah.
If they were going to bench him, he needed to be done.
Yeah, I thought there was going to be a major change in New York, and it didn't happen.
Well, it's clear he should not be starting.
Yeah.
I mean, between their offensive line struggles protecting him and his inability to move and throw the ball, it's not the right team for him. If he wants to try to go somewhere else, he would have to go. It'd have to be like a Dallas Cowboys 2016 O-line.
Yeah, I think he's done. I think he needs to walk away from the game.
I mean, he should. Absolutely.
He's surrounded by so much talent, and they're not making the best of the situation. It's
no,
sad.
and you can't. You mentioned how much success Saquon has. Well, he's pretty reliant on their O-line, so you can't put all the blame on the O-line there. It's a lot of Eli.
Yeah, right. Speaking of quarterbacks, like I said, we're heading into week 6 of the fantasy season, the NFL season. Let's take a look at maybe some of the surprises in the quarterback position. We just recently saw Drew Brees break the record for most passing yards ever, and he was 1 touchdown away from joining the 500 touchdown club. Brees is, according to the one website that I'm on where I have my fantasy teams, he's number 1 in fantasy right now. Maybe because he has that extra, or no, he doesn't have an extra game because they're on a bye this week. But so right now, according to these stats, Brees is leading fantasy, leading all quarterbacks. What are your thoughts on the season that Breeze is having?
Well, I think Drew Brees has done this for a long time. If he's not been number one every year in fantasy, he's had to have been top five. I mean, playing in that dome, the offense that he has run for over a decade now.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, what? How many years has he been playing? Like 16 or
he's
17?
been in New Orleans since
Yeah.
07 ish.
Yeah. Oh, okay. All right.
Oh, 08. I remember. Yeah, it's been 06, 07, 08, somewhere in
Okay.
there. So he's been plugging away like that for a while, and that's why he's leading the world in yards.
Yeah.
They always have great weapons too, partly because he makes the weapons. But now he's got Alvin Kamara out of the backfield. Ingram's back. He's just got
Michael Thomas,
right.
wide receiver. I mean, and we've seen that personnel change over the years, but that one factor, Breeze, has been that constant, and he's able to feed the ball. Not unlike a Brady. Brady has had his personnel change over the decades, but he always seems to find himself in that championship game, and that's why they call him the GOAT. And Breeze is challenging him for that title. I mean, Breeze is right up there. And when you discuss maybe the top five quarterbacks of all time, Breeze has to be in that discussion.
No doubt. And I think if you put Drew Brees in New England, he'd have the rings like Tom Brady. The Saints have never had an awesome defense. That has never been their thing. The year they won it, they got a lot of turnovers. That's how they that was their defense that year.
Now you bring up an interesting point with a weak defense. That means Breeze has to be coming from behind a lot and playing catch up and throwing the ball a lot. Do you think that's helped pad his stats?
Oh, that's a lot like Stafford.
Mm-hmm.
How many times do you go into the fourth quarter with the Lions and they're down 10 plus points?
Yeah,
and they just got to start throwing the ball over the place. And the Saints, there's a lot of times they blow people out, especially at home, but there's also a lot of times where they have to come back in games and they're down, again, 10 plus points. So, yeah, I think that definitely factors into it.
yeah. Now, one of the biggest surprises in the quarterback position in fantasy, at least as a surprise to me, is this guy named Mahomes playing for the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, on draft day, when his name came up, we do an auction draft in my league. When his name came up, I was like, huh? What? The guy who came in at the end of the season last year? Who's this guy? He was not on my radar. And I don't think he was drafted in fantasy as a starting quarterback, but there's no doubt that he has established himself as one of the, if not the top quarterback in fantasy. What are your thoughts on Mahomes? Were you as surprised as I was?
Well, when they traded Alex Smith to Washington, that was Andy Reid handing the keys over to Mahomes. I never really watched him. I didn't pay attention. I didn't know who the KC backup quarterback was. I didn't really care. But seeing this guy, his arm strength on the run, you talk about Aaron Rodgers being the best at that. This guy can put it on a clothesline and just absolutely whip that ball. And it's insane, the plays he can make with his legs and his arm working together, or his left arm even,
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, it's for fantasy, he's going to be pretty high off the board, I would imagine, for years.
Every week, pundits are saying, okay, when's he going to come back down to earth? And it hasn't happened yet.
Well,
This
he's in
guy's
a
on a
system.
tear.
Look at the receivers he has. You
Yeah.
want to talk about weapons?
Yeah.
That guy, Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill,
Yeah.
Kareem Hunt. I mean, he's got some great weapons to use.
Kelsey is definitely, he's when you talk about the greatest tight ends in football, Kelsey has always been right up there. I had him in fantasy one year when he had a down year, and but he has since, over the last 2 seasons or so, really established himself as one of the top tight ends in football.
And that's great for a young quarterback to have.
Yeah,
A tight end
who
like
looks
that.
14 to me. Like I see him. They bring up a graphic, during the game, and I'm like, oh my God, he looks like a little kid to me. How does a guy like that come in and dominate in the NFL? It's shocking.
It is. And you got to give a lot of credit to Andy Reid too. I mean, he's quite an offensive dude.
Now, speaking of padding your stats, coming from behind, this team, the Atlanta Falcons, has been in a lot of shootouts this season, which is
Yeah.
padding the stats of a Matt Ryan. Unfortunately, they're coming out on the losing end in these shootouts. I think the Falcons are what, 1-4?
1-4 going into week 6 here. Yeah.
Talk about he's surrounded by talent, even though they've been without Devontae Freeman because he's had some injuries. But what is going on with the Falcons? Ryan's putting up the fantasy numbers. The Falcons just aren't getting the wins.
I think they are down a lot of starters on defense, so that doesn't help. Having to come back, like you said. But Matt Ryan hasn't been the same since he won that MVP, and they lost in the Super Bowl to the Patriots.
Oh, that was awful.
When they were up 25 points.
Yeah, yeah.
He has not looked the same since then. And I don't know what it is. I mean, the only thing I can point to is their old coordinators now. Where is he? He's the head coach of San Fran, I believe.
Okay.
Whatever. Their old coordinator from that year is gone, and they just don't look the same. They have not been able to utilize the pieces they have the same, to the extent that they did when Matt Ryan was awesome that year. What was it, 2016, I think, when he won the MVP?
Yeah.
It was unbelievable. It was like a Mahomes situation. It was like every week they were putting up 40-plus points.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't know. I think he's broken.
Yeah.
It's scary.
Well, I don't think it helps. I don't think Julio Jones is playing at the top of his game either. I think he's on a downward slide. He's still one of the greatest wide receivers in football, but his numbers have come way, way down. I avoid him on draft day. So I think Julio's performance on the field is affecting Matt Ryan's performance on the field.
Definitely. I seem to recall one year I was forced into picking Julio Jones in fantasy.
The ONTV league.
But that's the year Matt Ryan won the MVP.
And
so
Julio had a big year.
That really worked out. But,
Now, in my big league on draft day, drafted 2 quarterbacks, obviously a starter and a backup, and found myself having a quarterback controversy. The guy that I had planned on starting was Kirk Cousins. And so I drafted Kirk Cousins, and my backup quarterback, believe it or not, was a guy named Jared Goff. And the first couple weeks of the season, I kept playing the wrong guy. The guy that I started would score less points than my backup guy, even though both of them were putting up numbers. But I kept finding myself playing the wrong guy until the week where Goff went nuts, threw multiple touchdowns to Cooper Kupp, who was also one of my receivers. And so which one if you had to trade Goff or Cousins, which one would you let go for maybe a different skill position?
Cousins. No doubt.
Cousins, yeah.
And I don't Jared Goff. I never thought he'd be good, but he's quite good. And that's another guy who is benefiting from a coach utilizing his talents very well. They're putting him in the spots where he can be successful. Kirk Cousins, I feel like, he's just not on. He doesn't have the offensive system that that they have in LA. They don't have that in Minnesota. They're more of a defensive team. And he always finds a way to turn the ball over at an important moment. Yeah. So I don't trust him.
At the beginning of the season, I was predicting the Vikings were going to win the NFC North. I thought they were going to dominate, and they were looking pretty good there for a while until they faced a Buffalo Bills team who had their way with the Vikings, and that shocked the heck out of me. I thought I started I started Cousins thinking, I'm going to get 50 points from this guy. And It was shocking the way the Bills manhandled the Vikings, and that made me wary. Like, all right, now I got to think about spot playing Cousins if I do it all, or do I just leave Goff in and go? But, now I'm not so convinced that the Vikings are the team I thought they were.
Yeah, I think the benefit of Cousins is more of his attitude and his ability to rally the troops, so to speak. I don't think his physical skills are beneficial for the fantasy game. If you wanted to have a guy like that, a general, lead your team on the field, that's one thing. But if you're looking for consistent numbers, I don't think Cousins is that guy.
Now, he does have a go-to guy we're going to talk about in a little bit when we talk about wide receivers. But Adam Thielen has been off the charts. We're going to talk about him in a moment. Another quarterback I want to bring up who I drafted in another league, Watson, Deshaun Watson from the Texans. I took a chance on him based on the numbers he had prior to getting hurt. And he started out a little slow this season, but every week his output in fantasy has gone up and up and up. Came down a little bit last week, but he still put up some. They had a hard time getting into the end zone for some strange reason. But what are you seeing in Deshaun Watson? He's throwing the ball to Hopkins, and what do you think is going on over in Houston? Do you think they're the real deal?
Well, real deal's tough because they dug themselves a hole. I think I think they're 2-3 right now. But I see a guy similar to Carson Wentz. A lot of ability, great system, a lot of weapons. But is coming back from an ACL injury. And you got to work your way back every week. I feel so.
Yeah.
I think Watson would be a pretty good play. From a fantasy perspective, moving forward.
Yeah.
Because that guy's got a lot of talent. He can move. He's another one of those running young quarterbacks. Not a run first guy, but he can get
took
the yards if he
beating
needs to.
in that game last week, man.
Dallas.
He kept running and getting creamed, and they kept looking at him on the sidelines, and I thought maybe he cracked a rib or something, but as long as he's throwing to Hopkins, he's going to have success. I think Hopkins is one of the greatest wide receivers in the game right now.
Oh, no doubt.
Who's your quarterback? Who did you?
So in one league, I got Phil Rivers and
Okay.
Carson Wentz.
Okay.
Both can put up points, so I'm happy about that. The other league, it's I got Russell Wilson, and I recently picked up Blake Bortles, who I can't stand.
He's just all over the place.
He
That guy,
is.
man.
He looks. I don't know how he has been able to keep his job.
Yeah.
Honestly, his arm has come along, but man, he could not throw the football before. It's gotten better. He's thrown more. He's got, especially last week. He came around. I guess he threw 4 picks at KC, but he also threw for over 400 yards. I love Russell Wilson though. He's their offense.
He's a scrapper.
He's
man.
a scrapper.
When,
and he's
when
their
they
offense.
find themselves behind, you just put the ball in Wilson's hand, and he'll either run it or pass it.
He's
a
a lot
talent.
like Drew Brees to me. Less of the running, from Drew, but the size and the mind. They seem to find open guys, you know, and they seem to create plays a lot. And so I like having a guy like Russell because I know that every week, you can be hot and cold on somebody. Oh, well, they're facing a tough defense. But with Seattle, he is their offense.
Yeah.
So all offensive output goes through him. So I like having that.
Quick question to you about the Buccaneers. Fitzpatrick started the season on a tear, looked amazing. Then he had a couple of down weeks. Winston came off, what was it, a suspension?
Yeah.
And he gets the start in week 6. What are your thoughts? Do you think Winston deserves the start?
No. No,
Do you think they should have kept Fitzpatrick in and let him fail? Or?
No, maybe because I feel like they need to move on from Jameis Winston. I don't think of him as an NFL quarterback, honestly. I mean, he's got a rocket for an arm, but that's where it ends.
Now they're playing the Falcons in week 6, and as I said earlier, Falcons have been involved in shootouts. I'm going to start a couple of Buccaneers players this week only because it should be a shootout, and there should be lots of points to go around. This game might make Winston look better than he is just because Falcons' defense is so terrible.
He still turns the ball over.
Yeah.
He still throws silly interceptions.
Let's see how that goes. One last quarterback I want to bring up before we move on to running backs is our Detroit Lions quarterback. What are your thoughts this year on the Lions season?
Man, that first Monday night game. Oh my gosh.
Ooh. National TV, painful.
Against the Jets.
Yeah.
Who won one game on the road last year. I was contemplating playing in traffic after that. That was one where I wanted to end up on M24.
Yeah.
Just
I was posting on social media. Well, there's always next year after one game. Now, Lions have redeemed themselves a little bit, but they're the team that wins the games you expect them to lose, and they lose the games you expect them to win.
Yes.
They should have gone into Dallas and beat the Cowboys. They did not.
Yes.
But then they host Rodgers and the Packers, and I feel they embarrassed the Packers. Even though Rodgers tried to make a comeback in the second half, but the game was never really that close. So how much of this do you put on the shoulders of Matt Stafford?
Well, I feel like moving forward, it's really got to be Matt Stafford. 10 years in the league. You got a guy that hopefully can figure out the defense in Matt Patricia. Defense has been bad.
Yeah.
But they're implementing a new system, so it's going to take some time. Hopefully they can figure that end of the field out. And Stafford's just got to run that offense. He's got 3 receivers that are pretty darn good. I mean, they're not. None of them are the best in the league. I don't even know if any of them are top 10 individually, but together, very consistent, very reliable.
But I gotta wonder, like in the last game against the Packers, Marvin Jones Jr., who I love, I have him on one of my fantasy teams. He had 1 catch. Now, that catch was for a touchdown, and it was a pretty spectacular catch.
Jeez, yeah,
why are you not getting the ball to this guy? I mean, I know Galladay had a big game, and Tate. So I know you got to spread the ball around, but I don't understand how Marvin Jones Jr. gets 1 catch.
Well, I think Galladay, because
with a hot hand, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, last year Galladay was out for a good chunk, so everything downfield was to Marvin.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, Kenny Galladay is looking really good.
Mm-hmm.
He can catch the ball. I mean, he's got a wingspan, where he can get it. I really think it's on Matthew to lead the team. It's interesting about the Packers game. He only threw the ball 26 times. So normally Matt's throwing around 40 times.
Oh, sure.
So Patricia's going to do, I think, plus they got the ball a lot in plus territory because Crosby could not make a kick.
That and Rodgers fumbled twice
Correct.
in the first half.
Yeah. So they had a short field a lot of the afternoon. But I think with Kerryon Johnson, coming, he's pretty darn good too. Matthew Stafford's one of the least pressured quarterbacks in the league. I think he's tied with Cam Newton.
Interesting.
Facing the least amount of pressure. So it's got to be on Stafford to lead this team. And he cannot have, I mentioned the Jets game because he threw 4 picks.
Oh,
that was a
painful.
terrible, terrible game. And Matthew Stafford, he's good for one of those games every year, I feel. I just hope he got that out of the way and that they're going to do what they need to do to win moving forward. And
Stafford, in that game against the Jets, I was calling him Paul Crew. He looked like Burt Reynolds in The Longest Yard when he was told to throw the game. That's what Stafford looked like to me.
Did.
Those interceptions.
Right to the linebacker of the Jets. For no reason.
I'm like, did someone say something in his helmet? Like
the warden came up
the warden. That's right.
Listen, boy, you're going to throw it to them boys and what now, all right?
That was ugly. All right, let's turn our attention to running backs. According to the website that I'm on right now, the number 1 running back in fantasy football is Alvin Kamara with the New Orleans Saints. Now, he's been playing pretty solidly all season until a running back named Ingram came. Again, he came off a suspension too, right?
Correct.
And poached a couple of touchdowns, to which Kamara owners were not very happy. What are your thoughts of the running back situation in New Orleans? It looks like they're going to have a committee approach.
Yeah, for sure. And, Kamara is one of those guys, you trust him more to catch the ball than you would Ingram, I would think. I imagine they try to get both guys some short passes. But when Kamara was successful last year, he caught a lot of passes and did the rest of the work, gained a lot of big chunk yards. So I would still love to have that guy.
Yeah. Now, here's a little interesting story. Number 2 and number 3 on my list here are Todd Gurley and Melvin Gordon. Little anecdote. 2 seasons ago, fantasy football season 2016, I drafted Todd Gurley, drafted Melvin Gordon. Andre Hopkins was my wide receiver. I should have won the championship, right? I came in dead last. Dead last in 2016 with Todd Gurley and Melvin Gordon on my team. They are now dominating this league. Gurley, of course, rebounded from that dismal 2016 season where he turned on the Jets in 2017, and he he looks even better this year. Both players are scoring multiple touchdowns per game. Last game Todd Gurley played, he had 3 touchdowns in one game. Talk about these guys, Gurley and Gordon.
I, yeah, Gordon is interesting to me because he looked bad to start, and was 16 his rookie year. I don't remember.
It was. I believe, yeah, he was a rook. Both of those guys were a rookie in 2016, weren't they?
I think Gurley was the year before.
Was
I
it?
don't
Okay.
know. Either way, they're similar age. But yeah, Gordon. You thought, boy, this is a huge bust. But he's in a good offense with Phillip Rivers. I mean,
Yeah.
that there's a guy, another veteran, knows what he's doing. They know what they're doing as a team. So their offense is something you can always look to. So I think it's just interesting to see a guy look that bad and then now look this good.
Oh, yeah.
Gurley, story there. I mean, in college, he tore it up. You knew this guy looked like an Adrian Peterson type guy, a
Yeah.
dominant physical back. I know he came off some ACL injury, but another guy in LA with a system that is just, it's a juggernaut. I'm scared to face the Rams,
Well,
as a
if
Lions fan or anybody.
defenses load the box against Gurley, then Goff throws all day. And then if they play deep to, prevent the throw, then they hand off to Gurley, who has a field day. How do you defend them? It's
can't,
tough.
because
They're
they
going to go
run.
a long way in the playoffs.
They are. I mean, they might be the best team in the league. I know Kansas City's up there. Patriots are always going to be up there, of course. But LA has the offense, and on defense, they are no slouches. They got some star power as well.
Imagine Gordon owners, though, when they see Eckler take a pass 60, 70 yards into the end zone. It always drives me crazy when someone poaches the star guy's touchdown.
Yeah.
Number 4 on this list, Saquon Barkley. We talked about him a little bit earlier. I drafted him in one league. Like I said, I don't want to say I took a chance on him, but when you draft a rookie, there's always a bit of a chance there. But my goodness, this guy looks like a seasoned veteran. Like I said, the only shining star on the Giants squad, and he is, as a rookie, he is dominating fantasy football and a good shot for Rookie of the Year, I think.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, another guy you want to talk about, guys you can identify, you just know, okay, they have the look of an Adrian Peterson or whomever. And
He's a beast.
yeah, Saquon Barkley looks like Barry Sanders, just low center of gravity.
Now, prior to the start of the 2018 season, I'm sure everyone was clamoring for James Conner. They knew he was going to be the star at Pittsburgh. No, that's not what happened at all. Bell, to much of fantasy owners' surprise, decides to sit out the season, and I don't know if he's going to play this season. Connor comes in, and people are going, Le'Veon who? Connor's been having a stellar season, number 5 fantasy running back. What are your thoughts in the Pittsburgh situation?
Well, the Pittsburgh situation is interesting, just in general. I don't know what the record is. 2-3, I think. Another team, a lot of weapons. Well,
Weak defense, though. My
weak
goodness.
defense, which is weird saying about the Steelers.
It is, yeah.
But yeah, especially now with Roethlisberger not being 08 Big Ben,
Mhm.
it's 2018 now, and he's another guy who's close to the exit door, like
Yeah.
Eli. I think-
Depends heavily on Antonio Brown.
Yes, and when you know that's your threat deep, or on the receiver end, it's going to open up some lanes for James Conner, and they have a good O-line. They really do. So those folks that drafted James Conner are pretty smart.
Let's talk about running back busts this year. One guy that I was going to build my team around in my big league, and I think this might explain why I'm 2-3 in my big league. I drafted Leonard Fournette, and I did not draft Yeldon as a backup. Somebody else poached Yeldon, who is now getting all the carries, getting all the points. Fournette is driving me crazy. I've tried to unload him. Nobody wants him. So basically what I've got from him so far was a portion of week 1, and then he left with a hammy injury. Missed a couple of weeks. They rushed him back. I think he really wanted to be back on the field. Re-injured his hammy mid-game, and now he's missed. Looks like several consecutive weeks again. Um, what what is going on, man? It's so frustrating. Do you let him heal and come back 100%? What's going on over in Jacksonville with the running back situation?
I don't know. I hope you can put him on your injured reserve because that is a guy you do want.
I
You
mean,
know,
I wish I could get some value for him trading him, but nobody wants to touch him right now. And the guy who has Yeldon is getting a ton of points from this guy. Man, it's so frustrating.
yeah, Jacksonville. That's when you got to do your homework on draft day.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah, and that's an argument for handcuffing your running backs. If you're going to draft the star, over in with the Chargers, if you're going to have Gordon, you're going to want Eckler, and in the case of Jacksonville, if you're going to have Fournette, you're going to want to have Yeldon. I wish I would have done that.
The Eckler situation is interesting though because Gordon's healthy.
Yeah. Oh, right,
You
right,
know,
right.
so it's like when would you ever play Eckler?
Yeah,
You know.
yeah.
So it's just that's why there's so much luck involved. You got to do your homework and then leave it up to the stars because football is a dangerous sport.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
somebody can go out and
Every
play one.
play could
You
be your
know.
last. Yeah. What's your running back situation in your fantasy teams?
Well, one league I'm comfortable. Like I said, I got Zeke, who I'm happy to have. I don't like him. I just can't stand anything to do with Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, I'm not a fan either. I don't know who deemed him America's team. I didn't
Uh,
vote for
Jerry Jones, I guess.
him.
He paid for that moniker. Um, I got it. Zeke and I'm blanking on the others, but in one league, I'm in a sticky situation because it's a keeper league, and I went with the strategy of keeping nobody because I was so
Mm,
frustrated with my team from last year.
interesting.
So a lot of keepers were off the board. So I had to get real. I had to do some bargain hunting for some running backs. So one I got that's interesting, and it's going to help me moving forward with Jay Ajayi being out in Philly. Corey Clement,
Okay.
their backup running back. I drafted him. Played him a couple weeks. Last night being one of those weeks. I think I got about 15 points from him.
Mhm.
Pretty good, pretty solid. I will take that. Yeah, but overall, running back to me is one of those positions, I guess. Any of the skill positions really in fantasy for me, but running back, you got to do the waiver diving,
Oh, sure.
especially now, week 4 and 5. You got to really find a guy that's going to take you home, hopefully, towards the end of the year.
It's funny you should say that. I'm doing something a little crazy in week 6. I'm going to start a guy that might not be on many rosters, but this is a deep sleeper. I picked up and I may start this week a guy named Ronald Jones, who is the number 3 running back for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Their starters have been busts. They've been disasters. As a matter of fact, one of them, I can't remember which one, the number 2 running back, did not get a carry last week. They're playing the Falcons this weekend. I have a feeling the Bucs are going to put this rookie in, this Ronald Jones guy, and say, show us what you got.
Yeah, I think that's a good strategy.
So I'm starting him because in that league I have Fournette and I have Tevin Coleman, who I thought, oh, he's a starter with Freeman out. He hasn't been producing. That Ito Smith has been poaching touchdowns. So what do I have to lose? I'm going to take this rookie, throw him in there in week 6, see what happens.
That's you doing your homework.
Exactly.
Favorable matchup, team that needs a spark. Hopefully this young buck can give it to him.
Yep. All right, let's take a look at wide receivers. I got a man crush on the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy right now, at least on this website that I'm looking at. Adam Thielen has set a record for most consecutive 100-yard receiving games to start a season, and it might be the most consecutive games in a row to have 100 yards receiving. I believe he's at 5 right now. Adam Thielen has been a beast, and I've had him on my fantasy teams the last couple of years. I am so high on the guy, and I have him in both my leagues. I absolutely love Adam Thielen. What are your thoughts?
Well, I can try to find his number for you. 'Cause you do have a crush, apparently.
I do.
Excuse me. Yeah, I don't like him. I can't
Really?
stand him.
That shocks me.
No, I don't because he's in Minnesota, and I don't.
Yeah, I know.
I For me, I can sit here and talk fantasy players all day, but my passion is still always going to be for the Lions. So every opinion I have is based on how does this fit into the Lions world, So
Yeah.
Vikings don't fit into that world so well.
Have you seen the meme where the boyfriend and girlfriend are walking, but the boyfriend has his head turned and he's whistling at the girl? That's me and the Lions, and my head is turned looking at other teams walking by. I've been a Lions fan for such a long time, and I don't mean to make light of the situation, but I describe my relationship with the Lions as being in an abusive relationship, man. I keep going back to them, and they keep hurting me over and over and over. And every time I'm like, I'm done with the Lions, they put a little win streak together. They put a little lipstick on. They start looking good again. And I'm like, man, what are you doing to me? Man,
I know.
I get so frustrated with the Lions that I thank God for the red zone on Sunday where I can watch every touchdown from every game on Sunday, and I'm not forced to sit there and watch an entire Lions game. It's too stressful for me.
I think I must like abuse or something. No, because I know. I mean, I know. I'm 30 years old. I'm no spring chicken, I guess. Um, but I guess for me with Thielen specifically, it's like you see this guy, and I look at him, and I'm like, all right, here's this white dude from Minnesota State wearing stupid yellow gloves, playing for the Vikings, and he's like, big plays, catching touchdowns. It's just very annoying. So it's hard to get past that, I guess. But no, you want to talk about reliable.
Consistent.
I mean, and he's got great hands.
Yeah.
Catches the ball really well.
He has some spectacular catches this season.
And yeah, I do appreciate the fact that he did go to Minnesota State, went undrafted, had to work his tail end off, and like you said, number one receiver right now, and very, if you're Kirk Cousins, God bless for having him,
Yeah.
Mr. Reliable.
Yeah, yeah. Number 2 fantasy wide receiver. Coincidentally, maybe not so coincidentally, looking at this website, I own the top 2 wide receivers right now.
Whoa.
DeAndre Hopkins.
Uh-huh.
I have Thielen and Hopkins on my team, both my teams, and they are producing. DeAndre Hopkins, doesn't matter who's throwing to him. He could be on the field in a Pop Warner league and catch touchdowns all day. DeAndre Hopkins, I mentioned it earlier, I think needs to be discussed as one of the greatest wide receivers in the game today. The guy is spectacular, and in crunch time, if the Texans are down, Watson knows that he can hit this guy. And there was that they put themselves in position last week when they had to get into field goal range, and Watson hit Hopkins, and he spun off a couple of tackles and was making these moves like a pinball, and he got him into field goal range, and they won the game because of that catch. The guy is so much fun to watch, so entertaining. What are your thoughts on DeAndre Hopkins?
I absolutely agree, and I think past 5 years, 2013 to now, best receiver in the league potentially.
Yeah.
Like you said, there are not many guys that if TJ Yates is your quarterback, you're still going to get yours,
Productive season.
And that to me is the most telling thing about him because he can do it anyway. His hands are incredible. His hand-eye coordination, some of the juggling catches he makes are just insane while keeping his feet in bounds. It's unbelievable. And then, like you said, his ability to run after the catch, get positive yards, won't go down. Very smart player. I think, I don't know in the league, who would be better than him.
When I watch the experts on TV, talk, they always talk about Antonio Brown and Julio Jones, and I'm like, come on, guys. I mean, Antonio Brown, like I said, Julio Jones on a bit of a downward slide. DeAndre Hopkins has to be in that discussion. I think he's right up there with Antonio Brown.
Yeah, I would agree. And I know there was a contract issue with DeAndre Hopkins, but he doesn't seem to be the diva
Right.
that other receivers have been, including Antonio Brown.
Yeah.
I respect Antonio Brown and his game and everything, but he does seem to be a bit whiny,
Yeah.
which I don't care for, I guess. But yeah,
Yeah.
I give the nod to Hopkins for sure.
Right. Number 3 on this list, Mike Evans, who's quietly reached number 3. You haven't heard much from Mike Evans. Of course, he's benefited from Fitzpatrick being on fire. I know he is the number 1 option with Winston coming in. That's going to be his go-to guy. So Mike Evans at number 3. They're coming off a bye, and going into Atlanta, he should put up some big numbers. What are your thoughts on Mike Evans?
Yeah, I own him in the league. He's been great. Another guy since he's come into the league, big target, great receiver. Another guy like Fitzpatrick's throwing to him. Okay, he's gonna get it. Winston's gonna throw to him. That's fine. He's still gonna get his. Another guy in Tampa though that to me is very interesting and resurgence of a year for him is Deshaun Jackson.
Yeah,
He's been
actually, he is
really good
number
in fantasy.
5 on this
Yeah.
list. And yeah, who would have thought come draft day, Deshaun Jackson would be the 5th top ranked wide receiver in fantasy? Crazy.
Yeah, there's been a couple weeks where I've played Evans and Jackson, and I'm like, yeah, Ian, are you really going to play 2 Tampa Bay wide receivers in your starting lineup here? And yeah, and it's worked out.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. They're spreading the ball around. Nestled in between Evans and Jackson on this list is a guy named Michael Thomas over in New Orleans, benefiting from Breeze's year. Talk about Michael Thomas in the year that he's having.
He's always going to have a great year as long as Drew Brees is the quarterback. Yeah, I mean, there's Mr. Consistent, top 5 every year. So you can feel safe if he's on the board to draft him, and he's going to go early because as we progress into more and more passing and other teams mirror what the Saints have been doing for years, yeah, he's still always going to be reliable.
Now, this might sound a little crazy, but on draft day, when I consider drafting players, not only do I take into account their performance on the field, but for whatever reason, I take into account their performance off the field. And I've gotten a little cold on a guy named Odell Beckham Jr. Now, I had him his first couple years. He put up big numbers for me, and I was really high on the guy. And then there started to be some off-the-field drama and some issues, and then he got hurt last year. And something is not right this year on that squad. He's voicing his displeasure and his quarterback and his teammates, and that's an ugly situation over there. Now, he did put up last week when he threw a touchdown pass to Barkley and then caught another touchdown pass, which was his first of the season in week 5. But then his numbers fell back to earth against the Eagles. Is Odell Beckham the reliable wide receiver that he was the first couple seasons in the league?
No, and it's unfortunate because I think he's healthy,
Yeah.
this year. That's not hampering him. But he's the guy that the Giants are rolling forward with. He just got paid, He just made his money. So he can call people out. He doesn't have to worry about things anymore,
Well, that is one thing that the team lacks is that locker room leader. Is Odell trying to be that locker room leader?
It seems that way. I don't know how successful he will be at it.
Yeah.
There's one thing when you play and you walk the walk and you produce on the field. But when you're whining and kicking,
Especially to the
nets,
media.
and it's like, there's a fine line. Calling people out on your team in a productive way, I think can be beneficial.
Yeah. But I think that has to happen in the locker room. I am not a big fan of that happening in front of the cameras.
True. It just depends how you do it. Sometimes a crap sandwich in public, compliment, crap, compliment, can be an effective way to rally the troops.
Yeah. I don't know. I think they need to make some changes over there in New York.
Oh, no doubt.
Let's talk about another guy who I have a bit of a man crush on, Cooper Kupp. This guy has just been on a tear, and the only thing that brought him back down to earth a little bit was a concussion he sustained in week 5. Sitting there watching the game, and they're like, Cooper Cup's not on the field. I was like, why not? And it turned out he had a concussion. Hopefully he'll be back in week 6. But this guy has been so reliable for Jared Goff. Have you been watching Cooper Cup?
Yeah, he's on one of my teams. Thank
Yeah.
God.
Yeah,
Because
been incredible.
and still a little on draft day, I was surprised. He was available in the league that was the keeper league that I mentioned, and I was able to draft him somewhere for guy. It was even in round 3 or 4.
Mhm.
So still a bit of an underrated guy, but I think
Yeah.
as we go on and the Rams continue to dominate, probably he's going to be much more of a household name.
Yeah. In week 4, again, keep in mind this is pretty standard scoring PPR. He put up 42 points as a wide receiver. He had multiple touchdowns.
Yeah.
And even in the game where he left with a concussion, he had a touchdown and 90 yards receiving. I could imagine what kind of numbers he would have put up had he stayed in that game.
Yeah,
And
a lot of his touchdowns are long touchdowns.
yeah,
So
yeah,
there's a
after the
lot of
catch,
points
he,
right
he
there.
shakes tacklers. And now in week 6, they're going to be facing the Broncos, whose defense seems to be suspect. So if he's healthy, if they clear him to
Please.
play, I think the Rams are going to put some points up.
Per usual. Yeah,
Yeah.
no doubt.
Antonio Brown has fallen to number 10 on this list. What do you attribute to Antonio Brown? He's usually a top 3 guy season after season. Why is he down at number 10?
I think a lot of it's to do with just where Pittsburgh's at and the downfall of Big Ben. I mean, he considered retirement. There's another guy you think is Big Ben coming back from that '04 draft class, and I think the fact that Ben cannot extend plays like he used to, it diminishes wide receiver production. So, I think he's a guy that's not losing any talent. He's not old,
Yeah.
and he's not falling down the career slope. I don't think.
Yeah.
I think it's just a quarterback
Right.
situation.
Let's talk briefly about tight ends. Some familiar names in the 1 and 2 position, Ertz and Kelsey. One bit of a surprise at number 3 is Jared Cook. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but Cook was a Ram for a while, wasn't he?
He was,
And now he's playing for the Raiders, correct?
I believe so.
Yeah. And so, yeah. So
That is
he's number
surprising.
3.
Wow.
And the Raiders, they've been
Mess.
really struggling. I think it's some sort of bad juju for getting rid of a defensive player.
Well, there's a lot of bad juju there, I think.
Yeah.
The fact that if you're a Raiders fan, are you gonna be going to Raiders games right now?
Knowing
when
that
they're moving to Las and they don't care about you.
yeah.
They said to Oakland, "We don't care about you.
Yeah.
Goodbye."
Yeah, I really believe in karma and stuff like that, and it seems like the Raiders are getting some really bad karma right now, despite the efforts of Cook. Number 4 tight end. I don't know if you've ever heard of this guy, Eric Ebron. Wow, why can't the Lions find talent like that?
They can find it. They just can't use it, apparently.
That guy is blowing up over in Indianapolis.
Yeah, I don't really care, to be honest. I did draft him. I can't stand the guy,
True.
but he gave me, 29 points in fantasy last week, so thank you, Eric. But
Man, he had a big game.
I just think in Indy, you got Luck back. Luck has always been a quarterback that has been able to utilize the tight end very well.
And he's been finding his groove again, yeah.
And they don't have any weapons right now in Indy because they're all hurt.
Yeah.
So Eric is going to get a lot of the playing time, and maybe he has matured. I think, here it was easy to root against the guy because he wasn't performing on the field. He'd give up on plays. His blocking was suspect. And he would drop passes. Those are all things in a town like Detroit where you will fall out of favor quickly.
Yeah.
If you're going to give up on plays, if you can't lay a block,
Yeah.
But and then the fact his social media outbursts and he just didn't seem very mature.
Yeah.
So maybe him getting out of here, just getting away from everything that he's experienced in Detroit, and being in a good system with Andrew Luck, who's a very obviously professional quarterback. Yeah, I don't know, because he's always had the talent, I guess you could say. It's just, was he putting in the effort?
Yeah.
and maybe he is
And
now.
how much is the organization to blame for that too? I don't know.
Right.
I don't want to focus too much time on kickers, but I do want to just mention Graham Gano. In week 5, the guy kicked a 63-yarder to win the game in week 5. And according to our scoring, where you get bonuses for distance, he put up for a kicker 37 points
What?
in week 5 for that
What?
63-yarder. Yeah.
Oh my God! Thank God I wasn't playing him.
So I went to the waiver wire, and guess what? He was unclaimed
No
in both my
way.
leagues. Nobody had Graham Gano on their roster in both leagues that I'm in.
Really?
And, kickers are kind of interchangeable. So I did pick him up off the waiver wire to fill in for my bye week replacement. I had Lutz to replace him. But, that watching that 63-yard kick was pretty exciting. It just looked like they said to Gano, look, the clock's expiring. We're not expecting you to make it. Just go out there and give it your best. And when I saw it sail through the uprights, like, you got to be kidding me. 63 yards.
Imagine being a Carolina fan. You're a good team. You're at home and you got the Giants here, and you are about to lose to them.
Yeah.
And then this guy saves your day.
Yeah.
With a 63-yarder.
Incredible.
It's unbelievable. Kickers I know do not get a lot of love in fantasy, but there are guys that can put up 10 points a week, and if you can find that consistency, that's huge to have a 10-point advantage over somebody else's position player. So
right. Let's talk a little bit about defense. There's a team sitting atop the list, number 1, Chicago Bears, who benefited from a trade with the Raiders, and Khalil Mack has been off the charts. And look at the Bears defense. They're number 1 in fantasy. We were talking about the bad juju in Oakland. The beneficiary of that trade are the Bears. What are your thoughts on the whole Khalil Mack situation?
Oh man, when I got the notification on my phone that Saturday, late September, or late August, whatever it was, I wanted to chuck my phone on the road. The fact that the Bears got him, the fact that he was even traded is insane, because that does not happen in football like it does in other leagues. You don't trade guys that are a top 5 at their position.
And
He's
a leader
1.
of the team, a guy like that provides leadership.
You got to pay the guy. Just pay these guys their money.
Yeah.
They're worth this amount. The market dictates that. You pay them that.
Yeah.
Why are you jerking them around?
Look at a guy like Ray Lewis, played with the Ravens for such a long time, defensive leader, but the entire team, both offense and defense, rallied around that defensive player, and I think Khalil Mack is a similar type of guy.
And they've got a lot of talent to complement Khalil Mack in Chicago on their defense, which is a little scary because the Lions play at Chicago, then they have a game against the Panthers at home, and then short turnaround Thursday, Thanksgiving, the Bears come here. So it's going to be an interesting 3 weeks there when we play the Bears twice in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Twice in less than 3 weeks, really.
What are your thoughts on Lions defense? Obviously, they've improved throughout the season, but they're still victims to the long play. You look at that Dallas game where they kind of had things in hand, and then they give up that 30-plus yarder pass to Elliott that put them in field goal range. The Lions just continue to give up that big play. That's always been their kryptonite, their Achilles heel. Right now they're sitting at 18 in fantasy. What are your thoughts on Lions defense?
I hope that they can start to change the big play on the other end, because you look back at that Dallas game specifically. Deshaun Hand had Dak Prescott. He fumbled the ball, and then Dak was able to pick it up and chuck it out of bounds, for an incomplete pass, and then they were able to throw it to Zeke on that big gain. So there, you saw it in the Green Bay game. They made Rodgers, turn the ball over twice via the fumble. So if they can continue to lock up receivers, hopefully, you gotta can't rely on the guy, but I hope Ziggy Ansah can come back at some point.
Right.
Because if you add him to the pass rush, that's only going to help hopefully get home. And you need guys like that, especially in closing time. It seems like in this league right now this year, it's almost like whoever has the ball last wins.
Yeah.
Because the scoring's been so back and forth. Um, when that other team like Dallas is driving to end the game, if you can get to the quarterback, stop the play, big loss, strip sack, fumble, turn it over. That's what it's about in closing time. And teams that can take the ball away at the most opportune moments, I feel like that's what it's all about in this league, with the rules that are changing and the scoring being up. You got to have a defense that can take the ball away.
How impressive was the Lions' defense performance against the Patriots? I mean, the way they handled Gronkowski, the double teaming, high and low. They sandwiched Gronkowski, and you see he was frustrated. And the way they manhandled the Patriots, I'm thinking, okay, there's something there. Now, granted, our head coach had a little inside
Knew everything
information,
about them, yeah.
and that I'm sure that helped. But boy, that sure made me a little bit more optimistic when I saw the way they played the Patriots.
The way they played the Patriots for me started with the way they stopped the run. They were not able to run the ball, and that forced Tom to throw it, and he didn't have anybody to throw it to. All his weapons were out. Julian Edelman was out. He had Gronk, and that was about it. So you double team him, take him away, and they were able to get home and sack Tom a couple times. So it's going to start. You got to be able to stop the run in the NFL because they, if you could just hand the ball off and get chunk plays every time, it's going to be a long day. And we saw that in San Fran, going into the fourth quarter down 30-13 because they were running wild on us. That's just they got to stop the run.
With the last few minutes we have in our podcast, let's talk about this roughing the passer rule and the impact that's had on the game. Do you see the NFL making any adjustments to this rule, like maybe bringing the refs in and saying, look, call it when you see intent? Or do you think the NFL is like, wow, we're loving all this scoring, let's just keep it going?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this?
I think from the NFL's perspective, they are loving what they're seeing, and they're loving the results. I think a lot of it is directly on the switch in the rule. In the back end, you can't touch a receiver anymore. You go back to that Lions game in San Francisco. There was a defensive holding away from the play, and it was like, come on, you just can't. The defense is so hand-tied. It's like they're playing with one arm.
Yeah.
So the rules are always going to continue to benefit the offense. And you see what happens last year when quarterbacks like Aaron Rodgers are out for the year. The games are bad. You can't watch them.
Yeah, you don't want your quarterback getting hurt.
No, the league knows that these guys need to be healthy every week. So,
and what's the end result this year? I've heard that ratings are through the roof.
Oh, I'm sure they are.
People are watching NFL football.
It's funny. Everyone wanted to bury the NFL last year, and rightfully so, because they are a bad league. They are a corrupt league that does not care about the fans or their players. But people love football. And when football is fun to watch like it is this year, it does not matter what else is happening.
Another observation is the completing the process rule has been revised, and I've seen a couple of catches and scores this year that last year would not have been a completion or a touchdown, and I actually think that improves the game. If it looks and smells and tastes like a touchdown, call it a damn touchdown. And I can't believe it's taken this long for them to see that. And I think it's made for a more entertaining game.
Yeah, no doubt. The catch in the NFL should be one of the most basic, parts of the game. If you can't define what it is, how as fans can we, watch and trust the product? So
I've always felt a catch was possession and 2 feet down. Now they've added that football move, which is open to interpretation. But I'm glad they finally addressed that rule, and I think the roughing the passer rule can be tweaked a little bit. But I'll tell you one thing: that the game is entertaining as heck.
Oh yeah!
All right, great talking football with you, Ian.
Amen.
And let's get together again soon and talk about what's happening in the world of fantasy. And good luck in your leagues.
You too, Joey. Thanks for having me on.